My daughter-in-law had an affair with my husband a week before we were supposed to sign the final documents. I didn't scream that I didn't cry. I smiled. What I did next left everyone in that room completely speechless. I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels. The afternoon light poured softly through the tall windows of my dining room, casting long shadows across the polished oak table I had cared for over 30 years. Everything looked the same as it always had, and yet nothing was the same. At 68, I had learned how to read silence. And lately, this house had been screaming. My husband, Daniel, had become distant months ago, not in the loud, obvious way people expect, not arguments, not cold words. No, it was quieter than that. He stopped asking how my day was, stopped touching my hand when we passed each other in the hallway, stopped looking at me, as if I had become part of the furniture. At first, I told myself it was grief. We had lost his younger brother earlier that year. Daniel had always taken losses deeply. I gave him space. I made his favorite meals. I kept the house peaceful. That's what I had always done. That's what wives like me do. But then came the small things. The late-night texts, the sudden need to step outside for calls, the new cologne he never wore before. And then there was her, Emily, my daughter-in-law. She had married my son, Michael, 5 years ago. I welcomed her into this family like she was my own daughter. I helped plan their wedding. I babysat when they needed time alone. I even gave them money when they were struggling in their first year. I trusted her completely. So when she started coming over more often, I thought nothing of it. She just wants to spend time with family, I told myself. How foolish that sounds now. Looking back, I can see it all so clearly. The way she laughed a little too loudly at Daniel's jokes, the way he lingered when she entered a room, the way their conversations would suddenly stop when I walked in. But at the time, I didn't want to see it, because seeing it would mean accepting something I wasn't ready to face. The day everything changed was a quiet Tuesday. There was nothing special about it. No holiday, no celebration, and no warning. Just a phone call. It came from someone I barely spoke to, Emily's older sister, Claire. Her voice was tight. Careful. Can I come by? She asked. I need to talk to you. Alone. Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. But I said yes. Of course I said yes. Because I had no idea that within the next hour, my entire life would split into before and after. 48 hours before everything collapsed, my life still looked normal. That's the strange thing about betrayal. It doesn't announce itself. It sits quietly in your living room. It eats at your table. It smiles at you while you pour a coffee. That morning, I woke up before sunrise, just like I had for decades. Old habits don't fade easily. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Daniel used to wake up early with me. We would sit in the kitchen, sipping coffee while the sky slowly turned from gray to gold. Those were our moments, small, ordinary, but ours. Now, his side of the bed stayed warm long after I got up. He had started sleeping in later, or pretending to. I didn't question it, not out loud. In the kitchen, I moved through familiar routines. Coffee, toast, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock on the wall. Everything was exactly the same, except for the emptiness. I set 2 cups on the table out of habit, then quietly put one back. That was becoming my routine too. Undoing things. Erasing expectations. Around 9, Daniel came downstairs. His hair slightly messy, his expression distant. He barely glanced at me. Morning, he said. Not good morning. Not my name. Just a word. Flat. Lifeless. Morning, I replied. We sat across from each other in silence. The space between us felt larger than the room itself. I might head out later, he said after a moment. Got some things to take care of. What things? I asked gently. He shrugged. Just errands. Errands. That word again. It had become his favorite excuse. I nodded. I didn't push, because pushing never brought answers. It only made him pull further away. After breakfast, he left without finishing his coffee. That was new too. Daniel never wasted coffee. I watched from the window as he got in his car and drove off without looking back. Something about that moment lingered in my chest. Not sharp, not painful, just wrong. Like a note played slightly off key. I spent the rest of the morning cleaning, organizing, doing the kinds of things that fill time but don't quiet thoughts. Around noon, I received a call from Claire, and suddenly, everything started to make sense. Or at least, everything started to fall apart. Claire arrived exactly 20 minutes after she called. She didn't knock right away. I saw her through the window, standing on the porch, gripping her purse like it was the only thing keeping her steady. That was my first sign this wasn't something small. When I opened the door, she didn't smile. Claire was always polite, careful, the kind of woman who chose her words like they mattered. But that day, her face looked different. Pale, tense, almost guilty. "Thank you for seeing me," she said softly. "Of course," I replied. "Come." We sat in the living room, the same place where I had hosted birthdays, holidays, quiet Sunday afternoons. Now it felt like a courtroom. Neither of us spoke at first. I waited, because something told me, if I rushed her, she might not say it at all. Finally, she took a breath. "There's something I should have told you sooner." Her voice trembled. I folded my hand in my lap. "Calm. Still. What is it?" She looked at me, and for a moment, I saw hesitation. Not doubt. Fear. Then she said it. "I saw Daniel with Emily." The words landed softly. Too softly for what they meant. I didn't react. Not outwardly. "With Emily?" I repeated. Claire nodded, her eyes filling with something close to regret. At first, I thought I misunderstood, but then I saw them again. "Where?" "A hotel," she whispered. Silence filled the room. Heavy, thick, absolute. "They weren't just talking," she added. "They were close." I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them, because in that moment, something inside me shifted. Not shattered, not broken. Shifted, like a lock clicking into place. "How long?" I asked. "I don't know," she said, but it didn't look new. Of course it didn't. Things like this never start suddenly. They grow in shadows, quietly, patiently, until they no longer need to hide. Claire reached for my hand. "I'm so sorry," she said. "You didn't deserve this." I looked at her and smiled, not because I was okay, but because I understood something she didn't. This wasn't the moment I lost. This was the moment I woke up. After Claire left, I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I walked into the kitchen and started washing dishes. There weren't many, just a few cups, a plate, a spoon, but I washed them slowly, carefully, as if the act itself was holding me together. Because if I stopped, I might have to feel everything at once. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Instead, I thought. And when I started thinking, everything came back. The late nights, the whispers, the way Emily had begun calling Daniel directly instead of going through my son, the way Daniel had started dressing differently when she visited, the way he would stand just a little too close to her. I remembered one moment clearly. 3 months ago, Emily had come over to drop something off. She stayed for dinner. Halfway through the meal, she laughed at something Daniel said. Not a polite laugh. Not the kind you give out of courtesy. It was intimate. And Daniel, he looked at her, not like a father-in-law, not even like a friend, like a man who had forgotten who was sitting across from him. Me. At the time, I ignored it, because ignoring things is easier than naming them. Naming them makes them real, and real things demand action. Now, standing in that kitchen, I realized something else. This hadn't just been betrayal. This had been preparation. They weren't just crossing a line. They were building something behind my back, something that had a purpose. And I had a feeling I knew what that purpose was. That night, Daniel came home at 7:15 p.m. exactly on time. Like nothing had changed. Like everything was still normal. I had dinner ready. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, his favorite. I set the table for two, just like always. He walked in, loosened his tie, and sat down without saying much. "Smells good," he muttered. I smiled. "Thank you." We ate in silence. Forks against plates, glasses against wood, ordinary sounds. But underneath them, something had shifted. I watched him, really watched him, the way he avoided my eyes, the way his phone buzzed, and he checked it quickly, then turned it face down, the way he seemed distracted, not guilty, just elsewhere. That was the worst part, not the betrayal, the indifference. I realized something then. He wasn't afraid of hurting me. He had already decided I didn't matter enough to consider. And strangely, that realization didn't break me. It clarified things. Because once you understand your place in someone's life, you stop trying to fight for it. I didn't confront him. Not that night. Not the next day. Not even the day after that. Instead, I waited. Because reacting immediately would give them control. It would give them the advantage. Emotion is predictable. And I had no intention of being predictable. So I played my role. The quiet wife. The unaware woman. The one who still set the table, still asked about his day, still smiled politely. And they believed it. Of course they did. Because people like them always do. They mistake silence for weakness. Patience for ignorance. Kindness for blindness. That was their mistake. And I let them make it. The following week, I made an appointment. Not with a therapist. Not with a friend. With a lawyer. His name was Robert Klein. He had handled our estate years ago. A careful man. Discreet. Exactly what I needed. I told him everything. Not emotionally. Factually. Dates. Behaviors. Observations. He listened without interruption. When I finished, he leaned back slightly. "And what would you like to do?" he asked. I looked at him. "I want to protect what's mine." He nodded. "Then we need to move carefully." Over the next hour, we reviewed everything. The house, the accounts, the will. And that's when I saw it. Something had already been changed. Recently, without my full awareness. A document. Subtle, legal, quiet, but dangerous. Daniel had begun shifting assets. Not entirely, but enough to raise questions. Enough to suggest intent. I didn't react. I simply said, "Can we fix it?" Robert looked at me steadily. "Yes," he said, "but we need to move before they do." The next few days were precise. Controlled. I signed documents. Updated permissions. Shifted certain protections. Everything legal. Everything clean. Everything quiet. At home, nothing changed. I still cooked. Still cleaned. Still smiled. Emily came over twice. Each time, she greeted me warmly. Each time, she hugged me like nothing had happened. And each time, I hug her back. Because the best disguise is sincerity. Daniel remained distant. But now I noticed something new. Confidence. A subtle ease in the way he moved. Like a man who believed he had already secured his future. That made things easier for me. Because confident people stop being careful. 2 weeks later, Daniel suggested we meet with the lawyer. To finalize everything, he said. Everything. Such a simple word. Such a dangerous one. I agreed. Of course I did. The meeting was set for Friday morning. At 10 a.m., Emily insisted on being there. That told me everything I needed to know. When we walked into the office, they both looked prepared. Confident. Almost relaxed. They thought this was the end. They were wrong. The documents were placed on the table. Neatly organized. Precise. Daniel spoke first. "We've reviewed everything," he said. "This should be straightforward." I nodded. "Of course." Robert looked at me briefly. Just once. That was enough. Then the discussion began. Assets. Ownership. Transfers. And then, the moment came. A clause. A detail they hadn't expected. A protection they hadn't accounted for. Robert slid another document forward. "This supersedes the previous version," he said calmly. Daniel frowned. "What is this?" I spoke for the first time. "It's the truth catching up." Silence. Then confusion. Then realization. And finally, fear. Emily's face changed first. The color drained from it. Her hands tightened. "This doesn't make sense," she said quickly. Daniel turned to her. Then to me. "What did you do?" I met his eyes. Calm. Steady. I paid attention. That was all. No accusations. No shouting. Just facts. And facts are difficult to argue with. The room shifted. Power moved. Not loudly, but completely. I didn't stay long after that. There was nothing left to say. Nothing left to explain. As I stood up, Daniel tried to speak. But I didn't stop. Because closure isn't something you give to people who never valued you. It's something you take for yourself. Outside, the air felt different. Lighter. Clearer. For the first time in a long while. I wasn't waiting for anything. I wasn't hoping for anything. I simply was. They thought I was weak. They thought I didn't see. They thought they had time. But they forgot something very important. I had lived long enough to know exactly how to end a story. And this one, I ended on my terms.